Thank you so much, Jenny. So I read this book written by Wookshik Jung.
Mm.
I really have been following him. He was here maybe about 20 years ago, studying at George Washington for about a year. And I did meet him in person right before he left to go back to Korea about 20 years ago. But other than that, I don't really have in-depth relationship. But I really started reading his column after we did a webinar with him 3 years ago on US ROK war drills. And he released his new book about a year ago. It was July, the first edition that was published was July 21st, 2023. Almost like after, not immediately after, but it was after Biden-Yoon summit in April in Washington, D.C., and after the Washington Declaration. So he does have some reflection on those. The book has a lot of details on a lot of things, but I was saying earlier, my first summary was like 30 pages, and then I condensed it down to 15 pages. So if you really treasure the details, facts, please get a hold of his book. It's only in Korean for now, so 한국어 하시는 분들은 좀 편할 것 같고, maybe you can get the e-copy and copy and paste, like using a translator. The book itself is not very thick. Um, it's only 300 some pages. So, yep, it looks like this. Yeah, so it's not bad. So I'll go right into it. I think a lot of the things you would be like nodding while I'm going through the summary. Maybe some stuff would be new. So in his prologue, he says, the new Cold War within us, we have to face it and we have to overcome it. If we don't, then we will be unable to gather the strength and wisdom to overcome the growing crisis around the Korean Peninsula and East Asia's Cold War. In the past 30 years or so, North Korea policy has changed, but drastically after 2019 fallout of the Hanoi summit, it has really drastically changed. And it's mainly North Korea becoming nuclear power state is what he's going to be saying later. So some of the things that he's saying, like the Korea, all the regimes in Korea have pursued peace through strength. In particular, the military buildup of the progressive governments such as Roh-moo-yeon, Moon Jae-in, and overwhelmed those conservative governments. You can see this by the average annual defense spending growth. And there will be a little bit more mentioned on that later, how Moon Jae-in spent more on defense compared to even conservative governments such as Lee Myung-bak, Park Geun-hye. And he starts out by that inevitably South Korean government are, I wasn't sure how to like translate this 100%, but tributary, submissive, pro-Americanism. So in the older Korean, like Joseon dynasty, Joseon used to pay stuff to China, right, in order to stay sovereign and for their protection. So they're continuing to do that. They're paying or being submissive to the United States, and that all the South Korean governments have been pro-America at it. So some examples, Roh-moo-yeon, he had to dispatch South Korean troops to US invasion of Iraq. Moon Jae-in, an excessively low-key stance toward the US at the first summit after taking office. These are some of the representative examples. So although they look different, on the outside, the mainstream political faction in Korea are pro-America. And that since progressives have used policy of appeasement toward North Korea, and the conservatives have used hardline policy toward North Korea, the argument that the alternative is a moderate policy that encompasses both have been widely accepted as truth. But he says he's very skeptical about this. Unless we overcome the inertia of excessive military buildup and dependence on the ROK-US alliance, any policy toward North Korea will inevitably go astray. And some of the things that have been happening until now. So we were always treating North Korea with emphasizing on their economic difficulties. And their economic difficulty is a constant, either whether you're liberal or far right. Nuclear was always either negotiating card or nuclear armed state. The core goal pursued by North Korea from the early 1990s to 2019 was the normalization of relations between North Korea and the United States. But from 2020, North Korea has abandoned this attachment to the United States and is making nuclear power the backbone of its national strategy. Isolation. In fact, North Korea has been in international isolation since the early 1990s. But now it's very different. You probably heard the news starting like this year, how they're now building new relationship with Russia and China. So those are some of the things that's happening. And North Korea is digging into this balance of power rather than non-proliferation. So North Korea recently emphasized that international order is moving towards new Cold War and multipolarization, and that it should use this international environment as an opportunity to strengthen its strategic position. So the author is saying now you have to read North Korea at ground zero. So forget about all their nuclear policies, all the efforts they put together to normalize relationships, to negotiate things with the United States. Now let's look at North Korea from ground zero. So this was the end of prologue, very long prologue. Okay, so let's move on quickly, and it's okay if you want to stop me and like add something very quickly, or like tell me to move faster. So let's make this a conversation because it can be lengthy. I'm only at page 2 of 15. So the first chapter is called North Korea Abandoned Its Attachment or Its Regrets to the United States. So you probably know the history. Their status fell, North Korea's status fell in 1990. And in order to overcome this, they focused on improving relationship with North Korea. North and South, North and Japan, all those relationships improved. But that converting armistice system to peace system will resolve post Cold War security concern, was what North Korea thought. Incorporating.
Echo, what do you mean by their status fell? Or what does he mean by their status?
Fell.
Yeah, the status fell.
Right. So as Soviet Union collapsed, North Korea also their status and economic status in the world have fell.
So I guess their importance to the Soviet Union fell.
Yeah.
Well, they were no longer getting subsidies, so maybe that would undermine their economy by not being subsidized.
Well,
Yeah, exactly. Basically, the Soviet Union viewed North Korea as it's not that important, so why maintain it, right? Why pour money right into it?
And the Soviet Union was collapsing, so it was, yeah.
That too.
Yeah, so they, you know how like eventually China made trade relationship with U.S. in order for them to come out of the isolation after the collapse of Soviet, right? So North Korea thought incorporating into U.S.-led economy was urgent and it was needed. Amid these expectations, North Korea has made converting its long-standing hostile relationship with the United States into a peaceful relationship a core goal of its international strategy. There were ups and downs, but these were their expectations and goals until 2019. However, after 30 years of dreaming, the United States aimed at maintain and strengthen the status quo on Korean Peninsula, basically. They continue the ROK-US alliance, continue the armistice system, and the tension between North and South Korea, tension between North and Japan continued. However, the resolution of the North Korean nuclear issue meant a fundamental change in the status quo on the Korean Peninsula. In the
Echo?
end, from the US perspective, it was better to leave North Korean nuclear issue as a problem for the US than to resolve it.
So you said something about the armistice system? I mean, I've heard of the armistice, but not
Yeah,
an
that's,
armistice system.
that's probably translation
Oh,
Yeah, that's the
error.
translation.
Yeah,
Basically,
keeping
it's
the armistice.
same as status quo, which means
This,
keep the Korea divided
Yeah,
yeah,
and hostile to each other.
you may have missed it, but this is a Google Translate, so take that with you. That's why it wasn't clear.
Yes.
What does it mean that North Korea's status fell? I'm sure it makes sense in Korean.
yeah, sorry. So the author gives a little bit of background and history, the promotion of reduction of U.S. troops in Korea in 1990. So during Father Bush's era, he was gonna bring the number of troops down, but because of the 1992 plutonium discrepancies, Dick Cheney in 1992 October announced the resumption of U.S. ROK joint exercises, the team spirit exercises, and later training that would be suspended in the US ROK agreement 9 months earlier. So 9 months earlier, like beginning of 1992, they were going to suspend these huge joint war drills, but because of the plutonium discrepancy, which was basically there was a report in IAEA that 90 gram of this plutonium was reported, but according to North Korea, it was only 10 kilogram, which could make maybe 1 or 2 nuclear weapons. So, and then later on in 2000, it was revealed that North Korea was right, and there was some sort of, I don't know, lie or whatever, made up numbers that was falsely reported to IAEA, that kind of created this crisis. And then the second nuclear crisis was during the Bush-Son. So in the mid-90s, using the MD missile defense system, resolving the North Korea nuclear issue, interfere with the MD plan, and North Korea nuclear weapons was needed in order to expand and strengthen MD. So Bush basically came out of the agreement for the light nuclear power reactor, and then continued this, or created this second nuclear crisis at the time. So the third nuclear crisis was 2010, aftermath of US-China strategic competition. China was emerging as a competitor to American hegemony. That has surpassed the 20 years since the collapse of the Soviet Union. And then the financial crisis in 2008, and then Afghanistan, Iraq war, et cetera, et cetera. So While until 2019, North Korea sought to improve relations with the United States and weighed nuclear development and denuclearization, the mainstream US has been using this to maintain its imperial status rather than resolving North Korea's nuclear program. However, since Kim Jong-un has completed nuclear weapons and achieved a balance of power against the United States, it can be said that he has shown determination to put denuclearization on the table and begin negotiations. So these are his actions in 2017 and 2019. The change in Kim Jong-un's decision was noticed after the top-down inner Korea and this is not North America, but North Korea and US negotiations that lasted from 2018 to the first half of 2019, which ended in vain. Many experts believe that among them, the failure of second North Korea and US summit in February 2019, or Hanoi No Deal, was the decisive factor in Kim Jong-un's change of mind. Okay, so you probably read in early
I have a
21,
question.
yes.
It's probably a silly question, but I had read, actually it was part of the news, that an embassy was broken into in Spain while Kim Jong-un was on the train to Hanoi, and a North Korean embassy, and that some people say that it was an intentional effort to sabotage, and other people say it's just a coincidence. I'm wondering if you have any insights into that.
Let's keep that for later. Let's take a note and talk about that later
Okay.
because it's not directly related to this book. Yeah. Okay. So in January 2021, North Korea's 8th Workers' Party Congress defined the United States as its main enemy and declared we will deal with the United States on the principle of strong against strong and good against good. Kim Jong-un said the key to establishing a new DPRK-US relationship is for the US to withdraw its hostile policy towards North Korea, but also emphasize no matter who is in power in the US, the reality of the US and the true intention of North Korea's policy will never change. Adding a long-term war against US strengthened its resolve. Sorry, I don't know what this part was about.
I mean, that North Korea's resolve
Yeah,
is
that-
strengthened. Like they're ready.
Right. They're not deterred. Exactly. They're not afraid.
They're not afraid, yeah.
Yes. I think
Okay.
Jenny and I understand Googlish.
Thank you. So North Korea in the 2020 is a different country than North Korea over 30 years, over the past 30 years. In particular, we should pay attention to the significant change in attitudes between 2018 and 2019 and beyond. Why has North Korea changed so much? As conservative political factions, this barrage, is this playing on Kim Jong-un's fake peace show, or has the United States consistent attitude of sanctions and pressure broken North Korea's will for dialogue? So what is it? So chapter 2. So chapter 2 covers mostly on the 27 letters that was exchanged between Kim and Trump. So I didn't go over like the letter by letter, but kind of summarized what the letters were saying, the points of the letter. So basically, in August 2018, so Kim was saying Trump promised to cancel joint military exercise between Korea and United States, but Trump did not keep his promise. And his disappointment accumulated, and Stockholm, Sweden meeting, which ended in no deal.
So just question here. When was the promise broken? Because August of 2018 was between the two summits. and I believe that the U.S. didn't break the promise until after the failure of the Hanoi summit.
So I always thought until reading this book, it was the summer of 2019.
Okay, so that's after Hanoi summit.
That's what I thought, but in the book, I think it was mentioned something about 2018 summer exercises, August 2018 exercises.
Wait, that makes no sense. So Trump would have broke the promise while he made the promise?
So he made the promise in 2018.
Right, August 2018. That's what it
Um,
says right there. August 2018, Trump makes the promise. So
so
did he break it while he's making it?
so this part is saying Trump broke the promise that he was going to cancel the August 2018 exercises, but I'm not sure
Okay, so
which
I see.
point.
So I guess he probably promised it in June
Yeah,
in
June
Singapore.
2018. Yeah, I think
So he
so.
probably, okay, I see.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that's right. Okay. So, North Korea announced the breakdown of talks. The reason was that there was no change in the US attitude regarding the right to life and development. That is sanctions against, which basically means sanctions. There continue to be sanctions against North Korea. Kim Jong-un's ominous premonition was correct that North Korea, which had set the United States deadline for change at the end of 2019, has now begun to run unstoppably towards a new path. So all the promises broken, all the agreements broken in 2019 now is setting new path for North Korea, their policy, their nuclear policy. So until 2019, denuclearization was an exchange relationship with the normalization of North Korea and US relations. But here, normalization encompasses not only the establishment of diplomatic relations, but also the lifting of sanctions against North Korea and the transition into a peace regime. However, North Korea no longer considers denuclearization as a card that can be given away. So nuclear forces in North Korea is now state power, according to the Eighth Party Congress in 2021 January.
That means that North Korea is a nuclear state.
Yeah, North Korea is nuclear state. Yeah. Okay.
Can I ask something?
Yes.
When exactly were the letters between Trump and him?
It was after the Hanoi summit, breakdown of Hanoi summit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the very first letter was March of 2018 when Trump announced he got this envelope and he's agreeing to meet Kim Jong-un.
Okay. I'm trying to figure out if it was like before or after all the promises started getting broken.
They've been broken since 1994. So which promises?
Well, the ones that Trump made that he broke.
Well, I guess he can't break a promise until he makes it. So I would think that the first promises would have been made in Singapore in June of 2018, right? And
Okay.
remember, in 2017, he promised fire and fury.
Right.
So the
My
letters
understanding
were-
is the letters are exchanged throughout, right?
Okay.
It's an
Yeah,
ongoing
Yeah,
27.
during
Echo said until
several years.
2019.
But
Right.
but
they
it looks
didn't go into quote.
it looks like there was about a 4 or 5 month period where between June 2018 and November 2018 where there was, I don't know, some kind of détente or something.
So
Yeah,
letters
March
were
of
exchanged
2018. It was March.
letters were exchanged from August 2018 to April 2018 to August 2019, according to the book.
March of
Okay.
it's got to be March of 2018. Because that's when I remember it was March 4th when Donald Trump issued that a statement that he's going to meet with Kim Jong-un.
Was it a letter or was it
it
a
was a March
Twitter?
8th. It was March 8th. No, it was not tweet. It was he announced it on March 8th. It was.
Okay,
Thank you, everybody.
okay, March. All right, so I'll look into that. Okay, so back to, okay, so now chapter 3. So now completing chapter 2 is that North Korea is now a nuclear state. So chapter 3 is from North and South Korea's unprecedented hospitality to insidious hatred. Is the
Incestuous.
Yeah,
incestuous
incestuous. Yeah.
hatred.
And that doesn't make sense, but if you know Korean, maybe you know what it means.
Yeah. So this is hating your own like sibling, your own family.
Okay,
Incestuous.
so civil war. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So the book talks about the sanctions and the inter-Korea relationship, basically. So the second North Korea and US summit held in Hanoi, February 2019, was an opportunity for Kim Jong-un to directly confirm Trump's intention. Kim Jong-un proposed first stage compromise that focuses on complete disclosure of Yongbyon nuclear facility and easing the sanctions against North Korea. But Trump refused, the meeting broke down. ROK US joint military exercises resumed in March 2019 in reduced form. The South Korea government introduced advanced weapons, F-35 fighter jets, all these weapons they mentioned. I can't even remember all the names. However, Moon Jae-in said what protects peace in North Korea is not nuclear weapons, but dialogue and trust. The Moon Jae-in's administration's Ministry of National Defense announced the 2020 to 2024 midterm defense plan following the announcement of joint ROK US joint exercises. It was a large-scale military expansion project investing 290 trillion won over 5 years, a huge amount. Also a policy that overturned the step-by-step disarmament agreement that was agreed upon the two leaders, North and South, in 2018. So inter-Korean relations are in quagmire. So Moon Jae-in kept talking about peace, but at the same time, he's raising the military expenses and resuming the US ROK joint exercises. So what does it really mean? As of 2023, the Moon Jae-in administration's his administration left two conflicting inter-Korean relation record. One is that this government, Moon Jae-in's government, was the most experienced in inter-Korea summit. Of the 5 summits, one was held each under the Kim Dae-jung and Roman administration, and the remaining 3 meetings were all held in 2018. So all the out of the 5 top leader summits, 3 of them were held during Moon Jae-in's administration. But meanwhile, at the same time, Moon Jae-in's administration also holds the record of the longest hiatus in inter-Korean dialogue. So since 1971, there has been inter-Korean dialogues, but since the conversation about Tokyo Olympics, December 2018, whether they're gonna form a single team, there has been 0 public dialogue between North and South Korea until his term, end of his term, which was May 2022. So very different. And among the pledges Moon Jae-in made while running for president in 2017, the highest fulfillment rate was that he kept his promise, his campaign promise, that he will increase the defense spending. He said he would raise the gross domestic product GDP ratio from 2.4 to 2.9, which was actually close to that. And thanks to this, Korea's military ranking was about 12th in the world in 2017, jumped to 6th by the time Moon Jae-in left office in 2022. On the other end, what is the most
What
failed?
does military ranking mean? Is that spending, or does it include effectiveness and stuff like that?
Spending.
Just spending?
Yeah,
Okay.
military spending.
Yeah,
So-
those percentages are percent of the defense budget relative to the GDP. That's what that 2.4 to 2.9%.
Yeah.
Yeah, question I have was there anything the pressure from the United States to Moon Jae-in to increase the military strength? So,
Maybe, yeah, or maybe
Definitely,
come.
Trump wanted to charge North Korea. Trump wanted to charge South Korea more for the USFK. So I think he wanted $5 trillion or $5 billion. Was it? Yeah, $5 billion, and they agreed to 1 billion, and before that it was $500 million or something like that. So yeah, it was Trump that pressured it. Remember, just like he wants to pressure NATO, same thing.
I guess some pressures from United States. So Moon Jae-in has had to build up the military and buying some weapons, I guess.
so remember the beginning of the book, the author says any regime, any leader of South Korea, they have always been pro-America, pro-United States, and at the same time being submissive to United States. So how much ever Moon Jae wanted to make this peace process move along, he could not get away from that frame and the parameter of that. Also, Moon Jae-in was very much criticized of this, the military spending, and also he wanted to gain the wartime operation control, and so their administration's excuse was that in order to get the OPCON, military operations control, wartime military operations control, they had to show to the United States that they're competent and they can spend this much money on military. They have all these weapons. So that's
They have to show to themselves. Why to the United States? South Korean South Korean Air Force and the South Korean Navy cannot operate without the United States.
So I have a question here. So in Japan, the Japanese government covers 75% of the cost of the basing and pays for all the local workers and all that kind of stuff. So is this something that Trump was trying to encourage in Korea too?
I'm
Or
not
is
sure.
that not
Yeah, I'm
really
not
that?
sure how much South Korea pays, how much they subsidize, and what their portion is.
Yeah, so I think he doubled it from $500 million to $1 billion during Trump, which is
Okay.
huge, right?
Right. No, it's a huge amount, but I think
And-
that's where Trump was going with all this, going back
And he
to
wanted 5 billion.
right, which probably would have put them on par with Japan's contribution for the bases.
I wouldn't use the word encourage. I've got a question, which of course I just forgot. Oh, is it that South Korea isn't capable of doing things or can't do things because the hand of the US is right in there controlling South
It's
Korea?
because of what's called SOFA, SOFA, Status of Forces Agreement.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's
But
what does that
usually
mean?
every nation signs a status of force agreement.
Mhm.
And usually it says, well, if the soldiers rape the local women or do something that's really obnoxious, that they'll be tried in a military court, not in a court of the nation that they're stationed in. So that's why the U.S. at one point pulled out of Iraq, is Iraq said, well, if your soldiers commit crimes, we'll try them in Iraqi courts. And we said, no, 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 they have to be tried in military courts. And that's part of the status of forces agreement.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying this is a particular agreement between the US and South Korea.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's not like a global agreement or something. Okay, thank
No,
you.
it's an addendum to the 1953. I believe it's an addendum to the 1953 U.S. South Korea Mutual Defense Treaty.
Okay, thank you.
But each and every country where the U.S. has troops is governed by a status of forces agreement in that country.
Yeah.
True.
Yes.
But no other country other than South Korea has this arrangement that its own military goes under the command of the U.S. This
Right.
is unique to South Korea.
Yes.
Why is it like that?
So that's
Because-
Korean War 101, Debbie. So
Because
I'll send you
because
the
South Korea
YouTube link
can't
for that.
their military is not strong enough to be able to defend themselves, basically, right?
Or
if
at
the U.S.
least-
if the U.S. pulled out, South Korea would get gobbled up by North Korea.
Yeah. That's
Now
what
we've
Well,
had
I
some
think in
discussion.
the
Let's go back to
beginning,
the presentation because Echo's fighting
Okay.
hard to get through it.
My
in the
apologies.
beginning, okay.
Okay. So, so we were talking about some of the things that Moon Jae-in administration that was conflicting. So the fourth item is, what are some of the things that that he failed? It's the field of North Korean policy. So Moon Jae-in was not able to resolve the North Korean nuclear issue, did not implement a new economic map for Korean Peninsula. He did not reintegrate the North and South markets and tourism, the Kaesong Industrial Complex, Inter-Korea Basic Agreement, resolving North Korea human rights issues, the issue of separated families, South Korean military prisoners, abduction issue. All these things he failed. He have not been able to properly fulfill.
Question I have, yes, he has failed on that part, but is it happened after the Hanoi and the dialogue with the Trump and the Kim Jong-un has been failed? I think ever since it's failed of that dialogue,
Yes.
and Moon Jae-in maybe stay this way, and then so people criticize Moon Jae-in has failed in this area, but seems like it's happened after that.
Actually, you know, there are some U.S., North Korea and South Korean summit was already, it already happened in 2018. So those agreements that they made, the September 2018 agreement, the April 27, 2018 agreement, all those things Moon Jae-in was not able to implement. And after the the fallout of Hanoi summit, even worse. Nothing was moving an inch.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think the what Moon Jae-in has did, he has let until the certain area, certain point, a certain area, he could do that so that North Korea and the United States can start a dialogue to resolve the issue, but that has been failed. And then after that, and ever since that failed, and then Moon Jae-in has to stay, not to work out as he planned, I think, as he could, I think. That's
Yeah.
I see. Because
So
that's after failure, failure of the dialogue. And but until then, I think Moon Jae-in did
no,
led to that direction, so the United States and North Korea can resolve some issues. Then will be different, but has not been done. So has failed. So Moon Jae-in step back. I think couldn't do anything.
but why did he have to wait until Hanoi summit in order to implement North and South Korean agreement? He shouldn't have. He shouldn't have had to, right?
Without the United States role, I don't think he could do that by himself. I don't think so.
There you go. So we're going back to the author's prologue, how South Korean government has always been submissive and pro-American, and they're not capable of moving or doing anything without the blessing of the United States.
And
But
can
at
I
the same time, he's increasing all this military spending. Go ahead, Jenny.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you made that point so often throughout our discussions. During those years, you would say, like, if Moon Jae-in wants to, he can do what he needs to do to get this accomplished. He might get pushback from the US, but he can assert Korea's sovereignty. And he wasn't willing to do that. It was a bridge too far. That was your argument at that time, right, Echo?
Yeah, yeah, over and over. Yeah. Yeah, North and South Korea could have declared that they're in peace, that they're no longer in war at the time. The mood was there, right? But the Congress, South Korean Congress never nullified it, the last process they had to do. So it only merely ended in a declaration, which didn't mean anything. What does declaring end of war mean? Nothing. They're still in a state of war. And at the same time, Moon Jae-in is ramping up all these war drills and all these weapons and spending more money. So what is he saying? talking out of two
To
sides, right?
I think to me he did his best way. I think to lead the North Korea and the United States dialogue, but completely was very much disappointing after failure of Hanoi meeting. And then I'm sure there's a pressures from the United States and as well as the people in South Korea is a pressure too. So eventually he couldn't do by himself and he had to comply or, as you said, submissive. But in that relationship, I don't think it worked.
At this point, Echo, I just want to bring a time check. It's 9:48 in Korea. So I'm wondering how much of this presentation would you like to get through today? What would you
Right.
like to do? How would you like to proceed?
So let's try to go through as much as we can. How about until 9:15?
Okay,
Or should
so we'll
we do
go for another
9:10?
30 minutes or so,
Yeah,
another 25, 30 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, okay, let's go. You remember that Moon Jae-in, they were trying to extend during COVID-19 early stages. They were trying to extend some aid and things to North Korea, but even with that, resumption of U.S. ROK joint war drills continued on. Moon Jae-in criticized Yoon Suk-yeol's government for being stuck in Cold War thinking, but the government he led actually continued the Cold War style defense policy despite having post-Cold War thinking. So this author, Jung Wookshik, does really, really criticize Moon Jae-in's policy or his failure of his North Korea policy. So conclusion of this chapter, the Trump administration is responsible for refusing to halt military training and to ease sanction. The role of Moon Jae-in administration was overestimated and its responsibility was underestimated. Although it may not have been his intention, Moon Jae-in subordinated his peace policy to the conditions of the return of wartime operation control. During Moon Jae-in's term, North Korea closed off dialogue between North and South Korea and the United States, focusing on security through nuclear weapons, economic self-reliance, and diplomacy focusing on China and Russia. North Korea's stance means that the existing policy toward North Korea, whether hardline or appeasement, has expired. So Shinhwa, there it is, author's intention about and his thoughts about Moon Jae-in, whether intentional or not. Okay, chapter 4, running continuously and speaking boldly is the name of this chapter. So as North Korea, which has changed in this way, South Korea, which has become more hardline, clash, the author is concerned that the crisis situation on the Korean Peninsula may become a new normal. There is interesting but worrisome aspect of hardened South Korea. The Yoon Suk-yeol's government is inheriting Moon Jae-in's government's specific line in an even more radical manner. Military capabilities, including the three-axis system and ROK-US joint training, are being strengthened. So you probably feel the same way if you are keeping up with the news about Korea, that this crisis is new normal. Of course, there's going to be crisis. Of course, there's going to be another threat. Of course, there's going to be another yet huge military war drills in the spring, in the summer, even more compared to last year. The three-axis system, the author was explained, is defense and counter-attack strategy to respond to nuclear and missile threats. So number one is the kill chain, a preemptive strike against North Korea's nuclear weapons and missile. Number two is missile defense system that detects and intercepts missile launched by North Korea. And massive retaliation is number three. It consists of punishing North Korea by launching a large number of ballistic missiles. So this is the three-axis system the Yoon Suk-yeol government has overtaken. So maybe I could skip through the new normal and you can read through the details later. But like Ronald Reagan on Busan 2022 September, the Vigilant Storm in November, all these more massive, first ever large-scale war drills is continuing to unfold. So what changed in North Korea was September 8, 2023, when the legalization of nuclear weapon was finalized according to their state policy. So from the end of September 2023, if their protests and warnings are not accepted, the North Korea protesting and warning against the war drills, they will fight back with military action in the style of an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. So in this process, they do not hesitate to make risky choices. Representative example includes firing artillery shells into the buffer zone established by September 19 military agreement, and landing a missile into high sea in South Korea side for the first time since 1950 invasion. So you've probably seen this in the news in 2023, last year. They're firing back and retaliating. So the next section is about South Korea, the US and North Korea how their policies, how their actions are becoming similar. So can North Korea achieve what it wants through a show of force? Their vision is probably blur, and this is like Google Translate error maybe. It's probably hard to achieve, difficult to achieve. They probably cannot show or achieve what they want through show of force, because this is becoming a vicious cycle of strengthening North Korea's military demonstration, strengthening US ROK joint war drills, and in fact, South Korea and US began the world's largest joint training in March 2023, March last year. And the offensive level of the training was also significantly strengthened. Yoon Suk-yeol's administration decided to conduct practical training at the theater level under the slogan of normalization. Accordingly, command post exercises as well as practical training were expanded to the largest in the world. The book describes like different names of weapons and war drills, US Air Force F-35B, F-16, etc., Vigilant Storm, etc., which I didn't write down. So in this way, the US ROK alliance and North Korea are becoming increasingly similar. If one side mentions the main enemy, the other responds with the same word. And if one mentions preemptive strike, the other mentions the same. So they're becoming very, very much similar. While North Korea in the past, when it was militarily inferior, They were busy pointing while being cowardly, but today's North Korea, which is confident in its military balance through nuclear force, is busy not only pointing, but also showing off its muscles. That they are nuclear state, that they have nuclear power. So chapter 5, the Korean Peninsula enters an irreversible nuclear age. So this picture, although it's in Korean, this was only one picture that I was able to kind of use. So this shows number of nuclear weapons all over the world.
Echo, what's the sentence say right before the picture?
This?
That sentence there right before chapter 5.
Okay.
The thing that's in Hangul.
Oh, this Hangul, yeah. It's what I translated here. So now North Korea is flexing, showing off their muscles, their nuclear weapons, while pointing.
Okay, I thought maybe it said something different.
The same thing. So this is how many nuclear weapons every country has. France has 290, Russia has 5,800, North Korea has 30. This is Federation of American Scientists, FAS. The author explains how North Korea has several unique characteristics compared to other nuclear armed states. And 9 were mentioned. So North Korea is the only country that withdrew from NPT, went ahead with nuclear armament, and went ahead with nuclear armament. They joined the treaty in 1985, declared withdrawal during the first North Korean nuclear crisis in 93, returned the following year, but finally withdrew in 2003. Second, there have been a total of 6 nuclear tests around the world since the beginning of 21st century, and all of them were conducted by North Korea. Third, North Korea is therefore the only country under UN sanctions for developing nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles. This is the price paid by blatantly rebelling against international norms prohibiting nuclear testing. Ironically, the 5 permanent members of the UN Secretary, which has the authority to decide on sanctions against North Korea, are all nuclear weapon states. In addition, Israel, India, Pakistan also violate international norms and created nuclear weapons, but these countries also receive support from the United States, let alone sanctions. Even in nuclear development, the phenomena of pro-America innocence and anti-America guilt is occurring. The fourth, North Korea is the only nuclear-armed country that does not have diplomatic relations with United States, and the only country that has ceasefire with the United States. So currently armistice, currently in a war with United States. So signing of the armistice in 53, North Korea has been longest standing enemy of the United States. And this brings to the 5th characteristic that North Korea is said to be a country that has pursued deterrence against the United States as the biggest justification for nuclear armament, following the Soviet Union, Russia, and China. 6th, thanks to the hostile relationship, the threat of North Korean nuclear weapons has been used as the sole and biggest excuse for the missile defense system, MD, that the United States have been promoting from the early 1990s to today. The 7th characteristic is that North Korea is relatively poor non-nuclear power. Relatively poor non-nuclear military power. Other nuclear-armed countries also rank among the top in the world. United States the 1st, Russia is 2nd, China 3rd, India 4th, UK 5th, Pakistan 7th, Israel 18th. On the other hand, North Korea's conventional military power ranks 34th, which is down there. But it is a nuclear power country, power state.
A question. I thought their military was like the second largest on the planet, or third largest. How can it be 34th in efficiency if it's such a large number of men with guns?
Maybe that's like yellow journalism or something. Yeah.
I
No.
believe because everyone has to serve in the military, as they're like every male needs to serve in the military and many females do as well, then they're counted as reserves. So their numbers are still counted within the military, although they are not active forces, is my understanding.
Okay, that makes sense.
Oh, maybe that's what it is. Okay. Eighth, North Korea is considered the most closed country in the world. Well, paradoxically, it has the most specific and transparent position on nuclear doctrine. That is the principle of using nuclear weapons. Ninth, and lastly, it cannot be left out that North Korea is China's only ally among nuclear weapon states. And the aspect of nuclear policy that can be deduced from these 9 characteristics are closely related to North Korea's nuclear doctrine, that is the principle of using nuclear weapons, which will be introduced from now on. Okay, yeah. So the author goes on and explains about North Korea's nuclear weapons, and how, like, their doctrine of when the nuclear weapon can be used. So in the past, North Korea's nuclear issue was always variable, but now it's constant. So you cannot avoid that North Korea is now a nuclear state. So even after 30 years of negotiations on denuclearization, and maybe like the 2 years between 2018, 2019, or 2018 through 2020, Kim Jong-un regime is now nuclear state, declared that their nuclear force is the national power. Okay. How can I shorten this part? Okay, so the condition of using the nuclear weapons. The condition is that when it is judged that a nuclear or non-nuclear attack by hostile forces against the national leadership and the National Nuclear Force Command Organization has been launched or imminent. If the order for use of nuclear weapons cannot be issued due to the failure of Kim Jong-un or the person in charge of command or the leadership, a nuclear strike will automatically and immediately carried out to destroy the hostile forces, including the origin of provocation and the command center, according to predetermined operation plan. So this is largely in the nature of suppressing the decapitation operation of the ROK-US alliance, which aims to prevent an attack by removing the approval authority when there are signs of North Korea using nuclear weapons. This is a threat to use the so-called dead hand if hostile forces attempt to remove North Korea leadership. So many of the US ROK joint military exercises include this decapitation method. So they made it into, the North Korea made it into their policy. Even Kim Jong-un dies, the nuclear weapon can still be deployed using this dead hand or dead man's hand. I don't know what the terminology is in English. So it's pretty scary, right? It's very scary. Some of the other conditions that North Korea can use nuclear weapons. When it is determined that a nuclear or weapons of mass destruction attack is underway or imminent. If it specifies cases where it is judged that a fatal military attack on the country's important strategic targets has been carried or is imminent. The repeatedly mentioned case of judged to be imminent are the preemptive strike theory and decalcomania of the US ROK, very similar to US ROK alliance.
Yeah, I've
Their
never seen
policy.
that word, decalcomania.
Yeah.
I've never seen such a word like that.
Oh, it's commonly used in Korea.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. North Korea has adopted the nuclear preemptive strike doctrine, which is a strategy to suppress the opponent's attempts to strike preemptively. In case of emergency, an operational need inevitably arise to prevent the expansion and prolongation of the war and to seize the initiative in the war. The conditions for the use of nuclear weapon also specify cases where a situation that causes a catastrophic crisis for the survival of the country and the life and safety of the people creates an unavoidable situation in which a response with nuclear weapons is created. These items can also be said to be tit for tat response, targeting the operational plan of the US-ROK alliance. The ROK-US plan consists of two strategies, defense and counteroffensive. The counteroffensive includes the occupation of North Korea and stabilization of operation. North Korea is trying to influence the judgment of the pros and cons of the ROK-US alliance by sending a signal that such an attempt will lead to nuclear war. Okay, and I'll finish up to here. So we're gonna finish at chapter 5. There's another thing to note about North Korea's nuclear doctrine. The purpose and condition of use of nuclear weapons were listed in detail and it was made public. And as stated earlier, why did North Korea, the most closed off country in the world, take the most specific and transparent stance on the principles of using nuclear weapons? This should be seen as the purpose of overcoming the military inferiority of the US ROK alliance and deterring war by clearly communicating the intention to use nuclear weapons. In relation to this, Kim Jong-un also stated the purpose of making nuclear weapons policy public and legally regulating the use of nuclear weapons is to reduce the risk of nuclear weapons, as much as possible to prevent misjudgment and abuse of nuclear weapons among nuclear weapons state. So that is their logic. In other words, North Korea, which lacks capabilities among the three elements of nuclear deterrence, capability, credibility, and communications, is trying to make up for this by demonstrating trust and communication. The differences between North Korea's 2022 nuclear doctrine are revealed even when compared with the law on further consolidating the status of self-defense nuclear state enacted in 2013. The law at the time stated, if another hostile nuclear state invades or attacks our republic, in such case, it can be used only in accordance with the final order of the Supreme Command of Korea People's Army to repel him and inflict retaliatory strikes. This means that North Korea will not use nuclear weapons first to attack another nuclear state, but if a nuclear state attacks North Korea with nuclear or non-nuclear weapons, it can retaliate with nuclear weapons, which is close to no first use policy of nuclear weapons. North Korea enacts its nuclear policy into law twice, 2013 and 2022. In comparison, the 2022 nuclear doctrine, which stipulates that a nuclear preemptive strike can be launched even when an invasion or attack by a hostile force is determined to be imminent, is much more offensive. Okay, so it's 9/11. Sorry, I couldn't go through it any faster or condense it any further. But let's consider this as part one. And
Well,
then
you got
yeah.
far. How many chapters are there, Echo?
There's 9 or 10.
Okay,
Yeah, so we're halfway through, but the last chapters are not so dense like this.
okay. Yeah, there
They're
was
lighter.
a lot of really good information in there.
Yes.
There's actually 13 chapters.
Okay, okay, so we're almost halfway through, but the rest is not so dense. Well,
Yeah,
Echo, on behalf of the gang, would you be willing to come back and present the rest, or should we just
of
study it?
course.
You would?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
are you
Thank you.
available next month, or should we postpone?
Yes, I'm available next month.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. Well, thank you so much. Maybe we can give her a round of applause. Echo did some good
Thank
study
you, everybody,
to us.
for listening.
There were some questions that showed up in the chat for discussion. So maybe we usually are here until the half hour. So if anyone would like to raise your hand, maybe we can do this really orderly and raise hand and then response, if that's okay, Echo.
Sure.
Okay. Michael has raised his hand. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, that question I had before, it's not in the chat, but I'm wondering if the break-in of the North Korean embassy in Spain subverted the Hanoi negotiations.
So I remember that that was happened by a person who's linked to
I think you're right, Echo. I remember that
Yeah.
similarly.
some Korean person with American name like Andrew or Alex or somebody, right? So I'm not sure if this was like related to Hanoi Summit. It's possible. So what I remember is that those people who did it, who are related to, I shouldn't say link twice, related to this organization called Link, Liberty in North Korea, which it's an organization that seek to crumble North Korea regime. And at one point, they were even talking about having a temporary government in China, if North Korea government crumbles, this alternative government that can take lead will be in China, and then they will go into North Korea. And most of these people are defectors, North Korean defectors, and many people who are
Echo, are you there? Is anyone else there, or is my internet?
here.
Okay.
No, I think
Except
she just froze.
Echo. We don't
Okay.
hear the voice from Echo.
All right, I think we've lost Echo. Michael, I have not heard that theory, that would have been something that might have interrupted the summit. It appeared to me from all of the statements that followed the Hanoi summit was that an agreement was on the table to be discussed, and that Trump entered and wanted to change the terms of the agreement. North Koreans were unprepared to do so, and so then they withdrew from the negotiations. So that's my understanding of how the breakdown happened. I can't say, I wouldn't know whether or not I don't even remember when the break-in at the embassy happened, if it was in fact while the train was traveling to Hanoi. So it may
My
have,
understanding, it was a few days that Kim Jong-un found out about it, like a day after when his train arrived. The timing on it makes me feel somewhat suspicious, because it seemed to like it happened right at the exact time that it could cause a what do you call, a loss of face in the negotiations. But I don't want to spread conspiracy or anything like that, because I have no idea.
yeah, I also have no idea. I think the largest loss of face was probably the fact that Kim Jong-un had spent 2 years building up his nation, his domestic political support to talk to the United States and to make peace with the United States and to begin these denuclearization process. And then suddenly, in front of the whole world, he lost face by the negotiation terms being changed last minute and everything falling apart. And he had to return to his nation and face that. So I think that was the biggest loss of face. I don't know how much the break-in in Spain played into that, but I'll defer back to Echo.
It's
Yeah,
echo back.
that's all I know. Yeah, my laptop crashed, so I'm joining with my phone. Yeah, that's all I know. I think that's a good way to end with that question.
I'm raising my hand, Echo. You had mentioned that China's only nuclear ally was the DPRK. And my assumption in you saying that is that that's because the DPRK and the People's Republic of China have a mutual defense agreement, their friendship treaty. So I'm assuming that that means that maybe Russia and China don't have an official defense agreement where they would a treaty like that. Is that what that means?
Yeah, so that was my understanding. So it was that North Korea's, the only alliance of North Korea is China. And as what you said, it's the agreement of the military. And this book was published before Russia and North Korea really started becoming close. So I'm not sure if there's any latest development between Russia and North Korea, but the military, of course, alliance is very different, right, from Russia and North Korea.
So
China's,
just
yeah.
one more additional clarification point. DPRK's only nuclear ally is China. Okay.
Yes.
So not China's only nuclear ally. All right.
No.
All right. I
The
don't know
book said
about Russia,
DPRKs.
China, their military agreements.
Yeah.
Okay. But the DPRK's only military agreement is with China. That makes sense.
Question I have, when you explained that according to author and then author's things, North Korea, the way they build, they enforce their military, the nuclear, the strength of a nuclear weapon, because of they want to show that they lack of something certain areas. That's what I understood because you read that part, and also I understand that with so far the description tells that how much North Korea has tried not to really break the nuclear war. That's what I kind of sensed that what I read, and they tried not to, but if there is any the harm, then they are going to use a nuclear weapon. And also the way they build up the nuclear weapon is to what I have learned from other presentation. And there is a process of the North Korea build, the reason why they build up the nuclear weapon, because there are times that the process between United States and North Korea in dealing with that, any contract, whatever promise, but the United States broke that promise. So they decide to build up the nuclear weapon. And whenever there's a breaking promises, then build up more and more and strengthen the nuclear weapon. And then the United States know that the nuclear weapon, what North Korea has built up is pretty much strong, I guess, pretty much stronger than any other nuclear weapons, even those nuclear weapons in the United States, even though there are many nuclear weapons in the United States, but the capacity or something is not quite strong enough comparison to the nuclear weapon. Is it what is it, NTP, whatever, new nuclear weapon that North Korea has built up. But North Korea really doesn't want to use their nuclear weapon. They simply build up that nuclear weapon, to protect themselves from any other enemies, I think. That's what I understand.
Yeah, towards the end, the author clearly states that North Korea knows the reason why North Korea will not start a war, or the US will start a war, or South Korea will not start a war is because it's self-destruction, that there's no advantage in starting a war. So North Korea is building the nuclear weapons. But the entire book is kind of saying before 2019, North Korea was building the nuclear weapons as a negotiating tool.
Right.
To leverage, to bring the US to the negotiations table. But now it's different. It's no
Because
more.
negotiation didn't work. That's
No,
right.
it didn't work.
Negotiation didn't work. They really disappointed North Korea, and then that's what they have decisive strategy, and then talking about normal relationship, even with the South Korea. Nothing.
No more denuclearization. Yeah. Denuclearization is the biggest thing that came up in Hanoi 2019, right? And they were saying, come to Yongbyon, we're going to destruct it. We will eventually denuclearize if you give us a peace agreement. But no more of that.
Yeah, they made a brave decision and an action, actually. But the United States has kept still the same condition, same way to insist their way. And so I think this time Hanoi experience is really turned down Kim Il-sung, and then really put the normal face on, in another world. So that was an awful experience for him.
Echo, we have time for one last question or just some final statements if you want to recenter us on anything that the author said. What would you like to do?
No recentering at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have time for one last question.
Excellent.
Anyone who hasn't spoken or piped up yet?
If I may speak, I've been quiet. I have a problem with the author's statement saying, okay, North Korea built nuclear weapons as a negotiation tools before 2019. I remember North Korea started building nuclear weapon when the Soviet, collapsed, and Kim Il-sung concerned about the U.S. invasion or something, attacking. The big dog disappeared. So Kim Il-sung wanted badly some deterrence, and nuclear weapon was the answer. So, okay, it's been used as a negotiation tool, but more importantly, nuclear weapons was built to defend their country. I think the author was saying that, but
Sure.
I just wanted to point it out.
Yes. Well, I think the point is that using the nuclear weapons as a negotiating tool is no more. Is the point, basically. But you're right that they started building as deterrence, but they were willing to give up their nuclear weapons, really, with the peace agreement, in trade with the peace agreement. But now it's no more, is what the author is emphasizing.
So negotiation tool is gone, but only defense.
Yes.
Force. Yeah.
Yes.
It remains. Yeah.
Yes.
If any of the new members that have just shown up today, we have 5 remaining minutes. So if anyone who hasn't spoken, who's new here today, would like to, you're welcome.
Jung.
Would welcome your insights.
If you want to.
Hi, thank you so much. This book is just so interesting to me because I want to just update some of the things about North Korea. especially because of the recent rise of the tension in Korean Peninsula. This is, the trash balloons and the Yoon government's reaction against it actually raised concerns for many people, I guess. So just want to better understand the context where this comes from. How do I have to understand that? So this book and the discussion here in this meeting helped a lot. Thank you so much, everybody.
Good. So maybe next month we can have a little bit more discussion on the current affairs of currently what's happening, what's been happening post publishment of this book. Yeah, I think we're gonna have more time next month on that.
That sounds great. Echo, we really appreciate your hard work put into this and really grateful. So we'll look forward to next month, getting through the rest of the book, having the discussion about current affairs. And yeah, everyone, please have a great month. Stay in touch.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Good night.